So when you look at the map of the networks of the brain, if the conductor is there or the ego is there, it will tell the different parts of the brain, you and you can communicate, but you and you can't, right? So, and I'm putting my foot down, and that is the symphony that we're creating, right? But if you take out the conductor, you could see all of these different parts of the orchestra communicating with each other, and that's why you get much more creative, right? With psilocybin or with LSD, because you're basically dampening or taking out the ego from the equation.
Well, you are in for a wild ride today, friends. This is number 391, The Cosmic MD on the Future of Consciousness and Psychospiritual Evolution, with third-time guest Dr. Ted Achacoso. And you can find the show notes for this episode at lukestory.com/drted, Dr. Ted. And there you will find everything we discuss in this conversation, as well as complete written transcripts of every word spoken. Now, for those of you who've heard Dr. Ted on the show before, he needs no introduction, but I'll just say this. Ted is one of the most fascinating characters I've ever met in my entire life, let alone interviewed on this here podcast. He's one of those rare humans that possesses incredible intellectual prowess, but also a huge heart. He truly is on a mission to elevate consciousness and alleviate suffering, which is essentially my mission and the mission of this show as well. So we have some great alignment there. And the bottom line is just every time I sit down with Ted, I learn so much. I laugh my ass off. He is just a character. So you're in for a real treat today. Here are but a few of the topics we discuss in this conversation. My experience with the Enlightenment Turkey that Dr. Ted created, the science behind the buccal troche delivery system and why it's so much more effective than taking pills and powders, modulating neural networks to reach enlightenment, the relationship between neuroplasticity and psychedelics, and how methylene blue is so closely related, my experience with Mambe as a former cocaine addict, why Chinese food makes you irritable, how Dr. Ted developed the most effective stress release I've ever tried. It's something called TroCalm, and it is incredible. We also talk about organic brain syndrome and the reason why it's so important for pubescent children not to be tried as adults, why ketamine can have the same effect as meditation, and what makes it safer than every other anesthetic. And perhaps more importantly, how to get out of a K-hole and what causes it in the first place, DMT deficiency syndrome and the cure for atheism, and so much more. I mean, I'm going to tell you, this is just a wild chat here, so I'm going to just leave you to getting into it. I'd be here forever if I nailed every bullet point. Just trust me, you want to listen to the end. And if by the end of this conversation you want to try Dr. Ted's products, Blue Canatine, which is made with methylene blue, and the new product TroCalm, which is really cool. I mean, it really does calm you down. We're going to talk about it in the show, but if you want to try that stuff, here's where you can find it. Go to lukestory.com/troscriptions. And you can use the code Luke10 there to get 10% off for a limited time. I believe that is only available till February 25th. And after that, for those of you that hear this late, the code will be Luke5, and that gets you 5% off. Again, that's lukestory.troscriptions, or just click on the link in the show notes for this episode on most podcast apps. But I'm a huge fan of their methylene blue troche and also the new one, the TroCalm. Very cool stuff, very effective, and definitely worth checking out. All right, without further delay, my friends, let's go ahead and jump into this enlightening conversation with the Cosmic MD himself, Dr. Ted Achacoso. Dr. Ted, so good to see you again,
So
man.
good to see you, Luke.
Dude, we have the best time.
Yes, always.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you the first time and giving you my gifts.
Yeah, boy, what a journey that began. Yeah, so Dr. Ted's been on the show twice. We did one in person in LA when the studio was there, and then we did one Zoom, which the Zoom ones for me are usually kind of but yours was awesome. We went into some crazy stuff. So we'll link to those in the show notes and people can go back. I'll put the link for this one at, let me see, lukestory.com/Dr. Ted. So we'll make that the show notes for this one. And then people can go back and listen to the other ones. But yeah, man, super great to see you. I want to start by saying last night I had an interesting experience. Dr. Ted formulated something for me kind of not for me, but formulated something kind of off-label and gave me.
Inspired by you.
Thank you. I feel honored. And he and his team recommended just take half of one and, just see how you feel. And I was like, psh, took a whole one. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting. So I had an interesting night.
Yes. Actually, I'm on a quarter of it right now. So
really?
Yeah. It's something that's off the books. It's just something that I was experimenting on for the last 3 years. And it's what I call the ET, or the Enlightenment Turkey. And as you know, the definition of enlightenment is very simple. It's a freedom from the illusion of the self. And it's not that there's no ego or self, but rather it's an illusion, right? An illusion is really defined as it's not what it seems to be. So you are selfing all the time, meaning your egoic role is always coming up. So I wanted something that will decrease the suffering of people, because the suffering, as defined by the Buddha and defined in neuroscience, actually, is this clinging and aversion to things. And what does the clinging and aversion is actually the self, right, or the ego. I don't like to use the term ego usually, because it connotes one sense of self-worth. So I refer to it as a self-referential system. So, and as you know, it was accidentally discovered in 1992, and then experimented on later, that the seat of the ego is in the default mode network. So, and then later on, with these large-scale networks in the brain, they identified the flow networks in the brain as at the central executive network. That's one that's outside looking. I used to do minimally invasive neurosurgery, right? So, 4 hours seemed like 20 minutes when you do that. That's you're in a flow state. And they also discovered the switching mechanism between these two. So these two are, it's called the salience network, and they're oscillating. So I said, if I can modulate the action of these three networks, will it give me the feeling of enlightenment? And this is just for my own personal edification. So, the large tracks were not really of networks of the brain, weren't really in an encyclopedia form until 2015. So I started looking right away for molecules that I could give to myself. I said, I could do this meditation thing for 1,000 years. So I could just blast myself with this and at least be free from the illusion of the self for about 4 to 6 hours.
Well, that was definitely the case, my friend. Yeah, it's funny. I took it pretty early before we had dinner, and then at dinner time, I was kind of like, I'm definitely feeling different. And then I started yawning, which I do typically when I do plant medicines and things like that. Some people puke, some people have diarrhea. I just yawn profusely. And I started yawning, and I was like, I think I'm going to go to my room. But then it was only like 8:30, and I thought, well, I can't go to sleep at 8:30. What time am I going to wake up? And so I just kind of hung out in my room because I didn't really feel like being around a lot of people. And it was really interesting because I kind of didn't know what to do with myself because my mind was just so quiet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to be on my phone. I called the wife. We had a great FaceTime and all that. But,
that's one of the things that you notice, right? Is the first thing that you notice is that the background chatter of your brain stops. I love that about it. Sorry, we can't release this on a consumer version, but your mind stops, and then you're able to see your roles arise. Right now, I am the husband. Now I am the, for me now I'm the doctor. Now I'm the teacher. I'm the interviewee. You see this arise without being identified with it. Right, you're not identified with the egoic role. You know that you're the actor instead. You're very aware that you're the actor and that you're playing a role. So that's what I want to come up, in there. But to Luke's credit, this morning, he was able to correctly identify the chemical classes that I used for this.
I'm sitting there in my room last night, and
of course, I can't help but being like, there's something strangely familiar here. And I start kind of analyzing the felt sense of being. And I think, this feels similar to this thing. But then earlier I kind of felt this thing. So I couldn't wait to see you today to just, am I close? Am I in the right classes?
Yeah, you're able to identify correctly the classes. Well, one class, actually, the intention was to downregulate the default mode network where the ego is, right? So it's actually the main structures in the brain for that are more or less midline, right? For the geeks out there, the most well-known one is called the posterior cingulate cortex, and there are studies that are being done, for example, in University of Arizona, where they put a highly focused ultrasound on the posterior cingulate cortex, and you experience the enlightenment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's because it's basically down regulating the action of that. Of course, the one that's responsible for your flow activity, right? It's if you see this, meditation bands, etc., they basically hit the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's part of your central executive network. So that's more of your outward flow. So one of the molecules that I use, in fact, the last one that I chose, what it does is actually it upregulates your flow state, right? And then there's a dynamic switching between the two, so that requires a separate molecule to actually modulate the oscillation between the two, and it does give you a mildly dissociated feeling. Not fully dissociated, but mildly dissociated, meaning you could separate. Everything looks like like a dream state, like a 3D, 4D, or whatever D, and you know that you are, this is just hands, and there's no identity being placed in the body. That this body is not you.
Incredible stuff. Well, it's a great way to start this conversation. We sort of started at the end.
Yes.
But I'm experimenting this weekend throughout these interviews with kind of not having a plan, because I'm usually very formulaic and I lay everything that I want to talk about out, and then it gets spontaneous and it goes where it goes naturally. Yeah. It's not like a rigid thing, but I do have a framework. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to feel into someone's field and maybe have a quick chat and then just go. But I think with you, where the work that you're doing now with prescriptions and the work that you just described, just kind of not in the public sector, but more for your research and development, I guess you could say, is brain optimization.
Yes.
I think right now people are really starting to see that the health of the brain and the lifestyle choices that we make and different nootropics and supplements and things like that we can take, the possibilities are kind of endless. And this is something people are really becoming more aware of. So maybe we could start kind of, at the base health optimization level and build our way up to the more nuanced fine tuning.
Sure. I would love to do that. Especially because there's a lot of confusion right now about nootropics. You hear nootropics, you hear, take this vitamin B6, it's a nootropic. And why? And modafinil is a nootropic, and this piracetam is a nootropic, and so on. And you go, what exactly do they mean by this? So I want to take a look at the old definition of nootropic, and it was basically Cornelio Giurgia in 72 when he synthesized piracetam. He called it a nootropic, and he essentially said, nootropics can really just be divided into two classes, cognitive enhancers and neuroprotectants, and then shoved all of the vitamins, minerals, etc. under neuroprotectants, right? So I said, there's something off with this, and it's because there's no definition of what is health and what is fitness, right? So health is really very simple. It's A plus B plus C. You like the acronym. A is absence of disease, plus B, the balance between anabolic processes, meaning processes that build, and catabolic processes, processes that destroy, according to C, the cycle of life of the organism. So illness medicine just deals with the absence of disease. So I said, I'll take B and C, which is the balancing of the anabolic and catabolic processes according to the cycle of life of the organism. And I call that health optimization. So what does this really mean? It means that just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're well. It only means you're not sick, right? So that has to be differentiated with the definition of fitness, right? And fitness basically asks the question, fit to do what? Like, for example, if you look at the advertisements of these sex pills, right, or these erection pills, make sure that you're fit for sexual activity, not healthy for for sexual activity, right? Or in law, you're fit to stand trial, not healthy to stand trial. So there's a question, fit for what? And so your baseline for fitness is not necessarily healthy. For example, I can be healthy, but I'm not fit to run a marathon, right? And you can be fit to run a marathon, but you may not be healthy. The same way in the brain, I may have a healthy brain, but I'm not fit to be a memory athlete yet because it requires training, right? But you may be a memory athlete, but your brain isn't healthy. So you could see now that performance is actually defined by the term fitness. It's like, would performance to perform what? Are you fit to perform what? Memorizing, thinking, judging, because that's what the brain does in terms of cognition, right? Cognition is simply remembering, thinking, judging, and having insight, right? So those are the things. Like what? So when you take a definition of nootropic, we're stuck in the performance mode, right? And we basically have forgotten the health optimization mode. So when I do brain health optimization, essentially the first thing you do is to optimize the whole body first, right? So you start with, since the brain is made up of cells, right? So the brain is made up of neural networks, right? Networks of neurons, and then they're made up of the specialized cell called the neuron. And then the neuron is actually made up of a basic cell. There's nucleus, mitochondria, cytoplasm, cell membrane, etc., which is common to all cells in the body, right? The only cells in the body that don't have mitochondria are the red blood cells. But once upon a time, they did have mitochondria, except that we had to form hemoglobin. So it gave out the mitochondria, so we could have the hemoglobin right there. So you could see that the basic, or where it all comes in, is if you take care of the basic cell, then you're basically taking care of the rest first. So, and that's when I introduced the class called Health Optimization Nootropics, right? So these are the vitamins, minerals, and other cofactors that you need. Like, for example, if you can test this by tests called clinical metabolomics. I think you've had this kind of test already, right?
Yeah, with Dr. Scher,
Yeah, so you could see actually what your levels are of the metabolites of your mitochondria, whether or not you have enough, or whether or not you have enough vitamin B, the B vitamins, right? For example, B6 is necessary for example, the formation of your serotonin, your happy mood and your hormone, right? So if you take care of the basic cell first, because B6 is needed by everything in the body, right? And so is vitamin C and all this. This is not limited to the brain. So then we have to optimize the health of the basic cell first. We have to optimize the health of the mitochondria, the health of the cytoplasm, the nucleus, etc. And one of the things that has been bandied about here is like, okay, oxidative stress, like redox, oxidative stress. Really seriously, that's just, when you think of oxidative stress, Luke, it's easier to think of it as rusting. You're using oxygen, and therefore you will rust things, right? As you're using up oxygen. So when the cell membranes, they wrap all of your cells, right? They can rust. So you could see the action of the rust here by the lipid peroxidation of the body. And the only test we had before for age, right, was called the T-bar test, or the lipid peroxidation test, meaning if your cell membranes were aging faster than your chronological age, then you're actually aging a lot faster than your chronological age. So that was the only test. But now we have various different tests now for for that. Like, for example, we have tests for epigenetic age, right? So they test the methylation of your body. It's like the way I see it is the way David Sinclair actually says it. It's like having plaque on your teeth. And as you get older, you get more and more plaque. And basically, with all of these optimization measures that you do, like you balance your nutrients and hormones. If you have hormone deficiencies or nutrient deficiencies, or you have say mercury toxicity that you have to address, right? It's just like taking out the plaque from your teeth, and then you notice that your methylation marker actually gets younger. And so I thought I was actually surprised, right? I was bragging to you that I just turned 60 just a couple of weeks ago, and my epigenetic age is 22 and a half. So
so cool.
I know.
That's great.
Yeah. The old test before was the telomere test, right? The telomere testing. And
so the telomere test has become antiquated, and there's something better now?
This is something better, but it's also based on something more different.
Okay.
Right? Something different. By telomere test, I'm old. I'm 32. So, and so this one, as you can see, when you do brain health optimization, you're doing optimization of the whole cell. And sometimes when your body is wholly optimized, you don't need all of this performance optimizing nootropics. So these are my classification, right? So if you're addressing your vitamin, mineral, or deficiencies in amino acids, for example, tryptophan. Comes from phenylalanine, right? Phenylalanine becomes tryptophan. Tryptophan becomes the basis for the formation of your thyroid hormones, right? And dopamine. And then dopamine becomes epinephrine. So you could see the importance of tryptophan. For example, if you're talking to someone and you see that the phenylalanine levels are low, you would expect that the dopamine levels are also dropping, and you would expect the person to have essentially have problems with focusing, right? So you don't necessarily have to give Adderall right away. You just take a look at these fundamental things. For example, if you're phenylalanine becomes tyrosine, becomes dopamine. And if you take a look at tryptophan levels, tryptophan is actually the where serotonin is synthesized from, right? So if you look at the tryptophan levels and it's low, then you would expect the metabolites of your serotonin also be low. So you could see this now. There's all of this could be tested. So by simple amino acid therapy, right? By having more protein-rich foods and so on, or checking the amino acid profile of your food. There are some drinks and some powders there that actually show you the amino acid profile of what you're taking. You can actually address these things without using any drugs first, right? So, for example, GABA is actually synthesized from glutamine, right? So it's glutamine, then glutamate, then GABA. So you could see that these fundamental amino acids, these are used by your body all over, right? So that's essentially health optimization, not only of the brain, but your entire body. So once your health optimized, then you could push the performance. Now here's where I call them performance optimizing nootropics.
Because you're not making up for an underlying deficit, right? So you're correcting the deficit underneath, getting to a baseline of standard health, having the precursors and the nutrients necessary to just have general well-being. Then when you get to that point, you turn up the heat.
Right. You said actually a very interesting word, which I introduced in a phrase of introducing health optimization medicine and practice, which was this practice is about. It's the standard. So in disease, you have the standard of care for a particular disease, right? But there is no standard of care for health. So what I'm doing here is defining a standard of care for health, not disease.
Wow.
So it's the first time that actually standard of care for health is being put out there, that this is a standard of care for health. Because in medical school, we're taught about pathogenesis or origins of disease, right? We're never taught about salutogenesis or origins of health. So
That's crazy.
yeah. So what's the immediately after you learn anatomy and physiology and biochemistry, you're shoved into pathology, which is like, hey, this is what can go wrong. But we're never taught what is healthy and what can go right, right?
Oh my God.
So the assumption is very different, right? So one,
hang on one sec, Ted. Thank you.
okay. So one is what's called pathogenesis, right? Which is the illness medicine model. We have the salutogenesis model, right? So, and we use an evolutionary lens for this standard, right? Because it has been found that all cells in the body, and this is important for you to actually realize, is that all cells in the body, once you stress them out, evolutionarily, they only have 8 responses, 8 fundamental responses, right? And in order to, and the body, the stress will be, the cells will be stressed all the time, right? They will be stressed all the time because you're continuously adapting to your environment, right? Either short-term or long-term adaptations to environment. So what's interesting there is that the body actually has what's called a cell danger response, right? So, and the body has mechanisms by which it actually hastens the resolution of the cell danger response, right? And that's what we do at health optimization medicine and practice, is we optimize the resolution of the cell danger response. Because if you do not, if the cell danger response is just continuously switched on, that's the beginning of your chronic diseases, like your diabetes and all of these other degenerative diseases that come on.
We're going to take a quick break to share with you one of the most unique and effective products in my health arsenal. It's also one that I've been using for a very long time, over the past decade at least. It's called Oceans Alive from Activation Products. It's a premium brand of 2 specially cultivated, hand-selected marine phytoplankton strains grown in a photobioreactor. The nutrient density of this microalgae is insane. It's loaded with a wide array of vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, and amino acids. Oceans Alive is the purest, most potent marine phytoplankton supplement in the world. It's fresh, totally raw, and pure. They use a scientifically proven natural method of stabilization that doesn't require any heat, cold, freeze drying, or any processing at all. My experience with Oceans Alive is a very noticeable feeling of untapped energy and focus. It's naturally packed with nutrients that boost your health in a multitude of ways. Its natural antioxidant content reduces oxidative stress, which is why this is my #1 air travel companion. It also promotes healthy cellular growth and development, and also boosts cognitive function. Activation Products has been one of my go-to companies for a very long time. They have a no BS approach and are all about giving people definitive information, the best quality raw material, then letting you decide for yourself. They just provide you with the knowledge and the most innovative products so you can take the lead in creating your own life equity and longevity. You can swoop up some of this Oceans Alive over at activationproducts.com and use the code Luke15 for 15% off any product. That's activationproducts.com. That's activationproducts.com, and the code Luke is a one-time use, so use it wisely.
This is also, by the way, sorry to interrupt, my sense or theory on acute or just chronic EMF exposure is a cell danger response.
Yeah. Well, that's already been
would
shown.
Would that fit in your paradigm?
No, actually, absolutely, because I don't know whether or not you've seen my lecture before, but that this EMF has been studied actually in grade school students in Canada, right? And they have shown that EMF actually increases cellular stress. Right? It's not disease, but increases cellular stress.
Right.
So it's actually very funny because when I lectured on that, I showed illness medicine immediately goes, here's the EMF and here's the relation to diabetes, right? No, but we at Health Optimization go, no, here's the EMF stressor and here's the response to your oxidative stress of the cell. right? So we go not to the disease, but to what the cell actually normally does. So the cell will actually strive to immediately resolve, right, the cell danger response. Now, if it's perpetually turned on, then it will go to chronic diseases. And as we know, that illness medicine is very good at acute care, acute infections, for example, or acute trauma. But we have a very dismal record at chronic diseases. And that's because we haven't looked at lower. We're still organ based, right? And so now that we are able to peer inside the cell of what's happening in there and how it responds to stress, now we could actually take a look at this thing and bring it to a coherent framework that, hey, it's about time that you take a look at the origins of health, right? Because the technology now allows us, it's like a car with a dashboard, right? So before we had no dashboard. So either you went to a doctor with a flat tire, or you already had a heart attack or you already had a stroke, right? But now you have like all of these warning lights, right? The warning lights is like your temperature is getting high, or you're low on windshield wiper fluid, or you have this, and that's a result of us also being able to take a look inside the cell. So you're now low on alpha lipoic acid, and you're now low on magnesium, etc. That wasn't possible before. Right, but it's now possible. So we now have what I call a metabolomic dashboard. Right, we take a look at these metabolites and say, okay, they need to be balanced out. They need to get replenished, or there's too much. They need to get removed. Right. So that's the core of health optimization, and it's not just in the brain, in the body. And when you're, as I said, no one takes care of the basic cell. Right. So who takes care of your nucleus, your mitochondria, your cytoplasm? Like your illness medicine doctor? No, they won't take care of that, right? So I said, well, let me start a specialty that will take care of your basic cell and its networks for you, and take care of how the cell responds when it's stressed out. As it turns out, there are around 21 metabolic branch points that you have to balance, with this. And when I looked at it, that paper came out after I introduced this framework. And it was actually quite funny because I'm already addressing all of these, right? So it was actually a great feeling for me to get validated, by someone who was looking at how we actually respond to stress and how we try to resolve the stress right away. So from there, then you could go now to the neuron itself, right? So the neuron, actually, when you test for it, so in the basic cell, you're testing for the metabolites inside the cell, right? The fundamental metabolites of your mitochondria, and so on. But when you go and take a look at the neuron now inside in the brain, then you have to take a look at neurotransmitters. And your neurotransmitters already. Dopamine is here for your focus and for the reward system circuitry of the brain. There is one thing that I'd like to correct, actually, in terms of the impression of people, that the dopamine reward, if it's the first time that you're actually going to get something, right? It's the first time ever that you're going to get something, then it's the dopamine that's the reward, right? But if it's the second time or the third time that you're going to get reward, the mere anticipation of the reward is enough to burst your dopamine. Right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's why gambling is highly addictive, and all this is anticipation of the reward. Yeah. And you couple that with the randomness of the payout, for example, in gambling, right? So the more it gets addictive because you don't know when you're going to get rewarded for it, but you keep on anticipating. Right?
That's kind of like the social media algorithms too, right? With the likes and follows and comments and refreshing to see if it got more traction.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? Yeah. You're basically playing on that. And
I remember hearing something about the way that they build apps like Instagram and TikTok and stuff to be, very sticky to the user. Is they actually designed it to be like a slot machine, with like literally with the refresh, it's like pulling the handle on a slot machine, and you got 3, ding, 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 you didn't quite get it, so you go again, maybe this time, it's crazy.
And it's actually quite sad for us too as a society, because it doesn't matter whether or not what you're saying is true, right? What matters is that you're emotionally engaged. because that's the one that's gonna. It provides the motivation for you to do the like, dislike. Like you get very angry at something that is not necessarily true, right? Because the whole game is to manipulate your emotion, right? And so you engage because it's the emotion that will get you engaged. Your brain won't. Your intellect won't get you engaged.
And
right?
It's the engagement that they've monetized.
Yeah.
Right. Because the more engaged you are, they throw ads at you.
And that's essentially how you game the dopamine system of your brain, right? It's the reward circuit.
Wow.
So
how does I want to divert a little here? Something just popped in that I for some reason I've not talked to you a lot about, and we've had a lot of in-depth conversations on mic and off. But how does the dopamine system relate to acute addiction? So not something or chemical addiction. So not gambling or social media, but heroin, cocaine, alcohol. Crystal meth, these really hard addictions to break.
These things have the capacity, for example, cocaine has the capacity to raise your dopamine levels to 4,000%.
Oh my God.
Yeah. 4,000x, sorry.
And
by 4,000x, yeah.
So that explains the horrible come down from cocaine.
Yes.
Right?
You're on
top of the world. You're solving all the world's problems. You're the shit. Yeah. You feel like king of the universe. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, I want to kill myself.
Yes. And that's a reason for that. That's the reason why you feel like Superman, right? In all of this. If a substance raises your dopamine level substantially, you would like to compulsively redose. You know that, while you're in this, it's like you're still just, for example, a couple of hours in it, and you want another hit because it feels so good. You don't want to come down, right? Then you know that that is basically a dopamine releasing drug, right? And it releases in high doses. Now, for those of you who are doing this, and you know that you want to compulsively redose, what I advise them to do is to actually set your doses in decreasing. You put them already in capsules if you're taking a powder, and set them. This is now basically mitigation of your for the risk of addiction, right? Risk mitigation for addiction is that, say, prepare 3 capsules of decreasing doses. Say the recommended dose is 200 milligrams, then put in the next dose at 100 milligrams, and then the next dose at 75, and be done with it. Keep the rest of your powder so that you won't get, you won't basically use your entire 1 kilo bag in like 2 days.
I would advise avoid cocaine if we're talking about that one. But
there are many cocaine-like substances.
Yeah. What are some of the other ones?
The one that's no longer in the market, for example, is 4-MMC, right? Which is a very strong cocaine-like feeling that you get. And it became a party drug, and then is now out. But it's been replaced by other cathinones ever since. Yeah.
You know what I discovered recently through a friend of mine is coca leaf powder. They call it Mambe, and you mix it with baking soda, and you put it in your cheek. And as someone who was a former cocaine addict, I was a little nervous, and then I did some research on it, and I found that everyone claims that it's very mild and non-addictive, and I really like it. It showed me kind of the wisdom of a plant medicine just left unadulterated, kind of like kratom or kratom, as someone in the Asia would call it. It's like when you mess with them, then you start taking out the other constituents of that plant wisdom that balance it, so it's like the coca leaf it's like the good parts of cocaine without the bad. And there's something about, obviously you're getting much less of the molecule, but I don't ever find like it's potentially addictive at all. In fact, I have some here. We're not in the United States right now, by the way. I forgot about it. I packed it in my bag, so I'm not like thinking, "Where's the coca leaf? Where's the coca leaf?"
You know how it's traditionally used, right? It's used as a traditional tea in the Andes because
Right.
to cure altitude sickness.
Right.
And it used to be when you hike the Andes and you were feeling sick, right, from the altitude, you could just go to someone's house and they would serve you that for free. They know that you can get that from that high altitude. So that was you could see the native uses it. Of course, it's used as an anesthetic for pain, right? It's also a eugeroic. It makes you feel good, right? I have actually coca leaves in olive oil.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it extracts something different if it's in oil.
Oh, no way.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
it's a great
It's-
plant medicine. I mean, I use it for focus,
Yeah.
doing computer work and
Yeah,
sometimes even interviews.
Yeah, and here you can just actually not take the leaf itself. You can just take part of the oil.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Why is it, I'm just going to geek out on some chemistry here. Why is it with the coca leaf powder that you have to put this alkaline baking soda in it to activate it? Because when I first got it, I just put it in my mouth and I was like, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And then someone told me, no, you got to mix it with baking soda. So I did that, and then it numbs your cheek, and you get this kind of very mild euphoric
Yeah.
and focus kind of attention benefit from it. But what's up with the baking soda or the olive oil?
Oh, it adds the geeky part of it is that it adds an OH group to the molecule, for which it binds very avidly, right? And it sort of like changes the conformation of the molecule such that it becomes active.
Oh, okay.
So, right, it's just like saying, well, scoot over, and then as it scoots over, it gets scrunched into a different shape.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And does the olive oil formula that
The
you're
olive
fond
oil
of?
actually, since it's it's water soluble, the active substances there are water soluble. Then essentially you're extracting it at higher concentration.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to do that. Thank you for the tip. Side note.
Side note.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
as I said, these are dopamine releasers, and we were talking before the show. Nicotine at high doses can release dopamine also by 40x, right? So
Wow,
these are
that's a massive
yeah.
increase.
That's why it's hard to quit cigarette smoking, right? For those who are 3 packs a day or so on, it's like it's really hard to.
It's hard for me to not chew Lucy gum every hour all day long.
But because the feeling of being alert, focused, etc. That's very addicting. Right?
It's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, when you feel sharp and laser focused, especially if you have a purpose. I mean, for me, I started out using nicotine as a nootropic to do focus work and things like that, but I just kind of got used to the feeling. I like the feeling.
Nicotine actually works on the same receptors as acetylcholine, so it actually boosts your working memory. So you have a lot more of sort of like temporary storage of information while you're working.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow.
yeah. So that's why I put nicotine in blue carnitine. Is because that's the one that's proven to improve your working memory.
In the blue carnitine, you've got 1 milligram?
Just 1 milligram.
Okay,
yeah. And I'm a sissy when it comes to the dose, right? I can't even do 1 blue carnitine. It's like I can only do 1/4. I'm already okay because I'm health optimized.
Yeah.
So just 1/4 is already just boosts my attention. And
on that note, I've actually noticed over the years as I've become just generally more healthy from the lifestyle that I live, that I've become much more sensitive to nootropics.
Yes. That's going to happen.
Like I used to take a huge tablespoon of Piracetam before my interviews. And now that would probably give me anxiety.
Yeah.
It would be too stimulating. Yeah.
Well, that's because you're getting more and more health optimized. And that's why I said, optimize. When your basic cell is optimized, your entire body is optimized, you would just need a little of the performance optimizing nootropic to boost performance, right?
Right.
So we were talking about dopamine and addiction.
Yes.
And then there's also, one that they is commonly affected by drugs is your serotonin level, right? You can test for the serotonin level. It has a metabolite. called 5-hydroxytryptamine, right? That's the you could see the 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid is actually the downstream metabolite. And I have said some patients with very high 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid, and when you look at it, it's like, oh, this is high, but you could see that they're actually overusing their serotonin, right? So these clients are clients because they're not sick, right? They're usually depressed, and they're compensating by using up a lot of serotonin. So you could see the rise in the downstream metabolite of serotonin. So
interesting.
Yeah, and serotonin, as I said, it comes from tryptophan, right? You can just do a health, make sure that your essential amino acid group is actually at levels between 21 and 30 years old, and you should be okay, right? And your serotonin production should be okay. So, and the other important one for wakefulness, right? Instead of taking modafinil, make sure that your norepinephrine levels, which is responsible for your wakefulness, right? When you're focusing, it's you can focus, but you can be sleepy, right? Those are two separate things, and it's your norepinephrine, or for the British noradrenaline, the norepinephrine actually levels is responsible for your wakefulness, and that comes from that comes from dopamine itself. It's a if you just one step and you get actually norepinephrine.
Being the health nut that I am, I've been doing lab work and doing my best to improve my biomarkers for years. But I have to admit, it's been expensive and often confusing without the support I need to implement the changes needed to get optimized. Getting lab results is one thing, but what's often missing is personalized recommendations. That's why I was so stoked to find Inside Tracker. They do DNA, blood, and fitness tracking in real time. Inside Tracker is the only human performance system that integrates real-time physiomarker data from your fitness tracker with your existing blood and DNA biomarker data. So once you sign up and get your testing done, you track your progress and adjust based on real-time feedback from your own body. As your body improves, your blood biomarkers change too. So you retest every 3 months to see what's working and what's not, and then adjust your goals to develop a new action plan. It's incredibly simple and very effective. If you want to take your performance to the next level, go to insidetracker.com/Luke, where you will save 20% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Again, visit insidetracker.com/Luke.
For this type of testing, Ted, how could someone listening that's like, wow, I'm depressed, or I have anxiety, or I can't focus, or can't sleep, or don't have wakefulness, how could an average person go get these tests done? Where are they available? What are they called?
Yeah, these are called clinical metabolomics tests, or metabolomics tests. You can go to the nonprofit that I started a couple of years ago. It's homehope.org, and you could ask for a practitioner
cool.
to guide you through.
Homehope.org. Okay, great. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, and we're always confused with functional medicine people. We're not, because they're after the root causes of disease, and we're after the root causes of health. So we have a very different way of looking at things, right?
Right.
So for them, if the disease is over, it's over. For me, the goal is your continuous optimization. So the thing never really stops, right? Your goal really never stops, because you want to continue to optimize health. So those three, actually, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, determine mood, right? So you could now test all of those. But the one thing that's actually neat is that you can consider acetylcholine, which is responsible for memory, right? And dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. You can call them neuromodulators, meaning they modulate the activity, the bursting of the electrical signals in the brain. And the two important ones, which are, we just assume that they're there, but is neglected most of the time, is that the glutamate, for example, is the major excitatory neurotransmitter in the body, right? In the brain. So That's why there's this, monosodium glutamate is what's called an excitotoxin, because it excites the brain way too much. It's kind of like, there's a Wi-Fi and it's crackling, and that's glutamine.
This is why MSG laden food
Yes,
tastes so good.
tastes so good.
Keeps you coming back for more.
Yeah, and the syndrome from it, if you eat from a restaurant that has MSG in its food, is that you get very irritable, right? And that's because it's an excitatory. Glutamine becomes glutamate, and it's an excitatory neurotransmitter, and that's the main one. You can consider the others as like focal. There are regions in the brain that secrete it, but this one is all over the brain.
Oh,
so it's the main on switch of the brain, right?
Is there any risk to taking certain psychedelics or plant medicines and having like a glutamate inflammatory response as part of kind of the hangover of that?
Not on glutamate, but I will.
Okay.
I will tell you later. I will tell you later when we discuss neural networks where this thing can happen. In terms of the other one that's neglected actually is the GABA system, the GABAergic system, right? And that's the main off switch of the brain. It also occurs everywhere, and that's the reason why people. One of the reasons why people cannot sleep right away or have poor sleep is that they have poor regulatory control of their GABAergic, what they call GABAergic systems in the brain. Now, the reason why your tongue is orange is that I actually created.
Show them on camera. I'm not ill, guys. I swear.
Is orange is because I created something that I said, what is it that can calm people down in a natural way? So I took a look at what are the bestsellers out there that calm people down, and you see it's Valium, right? Benzos in street name, and benzodiazepines. And they actually are agonists, or they actually go to the GABA receptor. So, and they induce this calm, right? I said, are there any natural molecules that do that? Oh yeah, there are. And so ever me creating something to calm me down, especially before sleep, when your mind is like, going at 100 miles an hour and you already want to rest, can I take something? And so many people were asking me, we want something for anxiety. And I said, okay. So I took a look at a couple of plant molecules, one of which is actually Kava. All right. So we extracted the active ingredient from Kava, and took a look and saw that it actually modulates the receptor, right? That plus I'm also working with a direct GABA agonist, plus of course CBD and CBG, right? Cannabigerol, one of the minor cannabinoids out there. So it really calms you down. And we sent it out, and people were saying, no. We get people who say, if you manufacture 2,000 pieces of this, I want it all. So
I'm the same way. Every time I go downstairs and see Scott, I'm like, got any more of those calm? What are they called? What are they?
Trocalm.
Yeah.
Trocalm.
So for those listening, there's the transcriptions, the blue cannatine,
and then there's just blue, which is
just like a high dose methylene blue, and then Trocalm are the orange ones.
Trocalm.
They're incredible.
Yes, Trocalm the fuck down, right?
We gave Bailey one last night, and after like 2 minutes, she's like, "Wow, the side of my face is numb." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the Kava. That's Kava. Strong Kava."
Yeah, it's very strong.
There's a lot of crappy Kava on the market.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to Whole Foods, you can get like Kava capsules. They don't do anything. So I'm glad you guys figured it out. There's a couple of other like tinctures, the Kavaplex, is quite strong. And there's another one called Feel Free. These drinks I have that are made with kratom and Kava extract, and they're noticeably calming. I mean, there's a state change, but yours is the only one, especially in a troche, that like happens that fast. So tell us, I'm going to sidetrack here. We're just going to bob and weave.
Fine.
You were telling me last night you chose to do your troches rather than like a capsule, a pill, a liquid.
Yeah, as a buccal troche. Yeah.
Yeah, when you put it up in your gum, that it's closer to your brain or something?
Brain circulatory system. So the base of the brain is actually right here, just right above your palate, right? So, believe me, I've inserted many catheters in there during my days poking around in the brain, but with live patients. But there are two. Troche can be a lozenge. You put it under your tongue. But this is a buccal troche is actually between your upper cheek and gum, right? The space between your cheek and gum is called the buccal space, and you insert it up there. Actually, ideal is for it not to dissolve in saliva, right? Because saliva you're going to swallow. So the better the apposition between your mucous membrane and the troche itself, then it goes directly to the bloodstream that is at the base of your brain, right? The effect is more immediate.
And then it doesn't have to pass through your GI tract and get filtered out by
the liver.
Yeah, okay.
By the liver. And as we were talking last night, I said I want to keep it as close to the brain as possible.
Yeah.
But if I were making a boner suppository, I'd probably shove it in the ass.
Put it in yeah.
Or insert it in the urethra. There is actually a drug that you insert in the urethra.
Ow. I would just not have sex if that was the case. Well, you're going to meet my friend Dr. John Laurence, who's been on the show a couple times, and he's the one that makes these NAD suppositories and melatonin and stuff. And I like that idea of alternative methods of administration because
delivery.
You can bypass all of the filters that are going to take out what you're trying to get in your bloodstream.
Yeah. We discussed this before. The reason why DMT is not orally active is that the liver will immediately, degrade it. Right. That's why you have to inhibit the liver. In fact, Banisteriopsis caapi, or the vine itself, that is actually the liver inhibitor, right? Psychotria viridis, the plant, contains the DMT. So, but what is known as ayahuasca is actually the vine and is actually a liver inhibitor. So so that the DMT in Psychotria viridis, the plant, will actually can actually stay in your system for much longer. So you could see, the liver has been very kind to us, right? It detoxifies a lot of things and so on. But sometimes, you need to inhibit it in order to get the effects that you want for an oral formulation.
Got it.
For an oral formulation.
Got it.
Methylene blue, actually, at low doses, will inhibit what's called monoamine oxidase A. And when you do that, and that's in the liver, right? And when you do that, your monoamine neurotransmitters will rise. Dopamine, that's a monoamine.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay, so, I got a question for you. A couple years ago, I had, 6 experiences in peyote ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And these peyote ceremonies, the way that these shaman held their ceremonies was that you're not allowed to fall asleep, lay down, anything. You got to be sitting up, cognizant, aware of the whole ceremony, because there's all of these ancient traditions that are sort of embedded in that experience. To stay awake, I was doing the transcriptions, the blue carnitine. It's got a little caffeine in there, and the methylene blue.
Yeah.
And in all 6 of those experiences, I took the same amount of medicine as everyone else, a few handfuls of peyote powdered cactus, and I didn't really feel it. And afterward, I was wondering, because I was the only one taking methylene blue, I was wondering if I like blocked it by taking the methylene blue. Is there anything chemistry-wise that I was in that troche that would have prevented me from having a more full experience?
Mescaline.
With the mescaline?
Mescaline, right? Is peyote is mescaline. And mescaline is a 5-HT2A receptor. It binds to the 5-HT2A receptor, much like LSD and so on. But I think it's like to the order of magnitude of a few thousands less. So a low dose of, a dose of mescaline versus LSD will be thousands of orders of magnitude different. So one, it could be that the dosage you took is way too low. Number two is that you probably raised all of your dopamine because you're taking that. You probably raised your dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine levels such that the rise in serotonin was not perceptible to you.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there were positive experiences, and as the hours wore on, there were some revelations and things that were very powerful and worthwhile. But I just remember on those occasions looking around the room and I'm going like, what did these guys take? Because I'm pretty straight, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm not having, people are seeing their grandma in the fire and having all these things. And I'm kind of like, what time is it,
It's because it actually raises all of the other neurotransmitters. So you have a more balanced look. When you put things in imbalance, like for example in DMT, when there's a very or even MDMA, right, when there's very high rise in your serotonin levels, right, you will see all of those responses, right?
Got it.
And therefore you essentially want to avoid that's called the serotonin syndrome, right? By when you eat like tyramine-rich foods like cheeses, for example, or even chocolate, right? Chocolate has phenethylamines and so on. So, while your liver is blocked, so these are the kinds of things that you would get into, but it's more of the serotonin that you're worried about, right? Dopamine you're worried about because it can get you addicted. And the crash actually is quite severe. In serotonin too, the crash can be quite severe if you just, take MDMA like every 2 hours or something. It's just like really bad, right? And so these are the kinds of, if you take a look at it, you're basically elevating these neurotransmitters and then crashing them, right? But when you have a liver inhibitor, essentially they rise. So what happened to you there in your experience is that they probably all rose. And since I think the classic peyote is Lalophora williamsi or something like that. It's a cactus, right? And it's actually, you need a very high dose of it to approximate even, LSD or any of the other classic psychedelics that are in there.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I learned just based on intuition, if I'm going to participate in an experience like that, to just leave everything else out so that I can really be more finely tuned to that particular experience or that entourage of different alkaloids and things like that, right? I learned kind of maybe I shouldn't interfere with it and just if I get sleepy, oh well, I think it's kind of my controlling nature. It's like I want to manage every little situation like that so that it's perfect, and sometimes it kind of goes haywire. Not that they were negative experiences, but I just thought, that's interesting. Yeah, I might have blocked some of the experience by just taking things to stay awake and focused and such.
Yeah, it's actually a good segue. You're mentioning of peyote to the next part of what you would like to take a look at in the brain when you optimize it, right? So first we optimize the basic cell and then the neurons. And then after the neurons, the neural network. Of course, the brain is a network of neurons, right? And here's where this gets interesting, right? When you take high doses of mescaline, for example, or of psilocybin. Psilocybin is a prodrug, right? Psilocin is the active drug. It's converted by the liver to psilocin, right? And what it does is that it essentially dampens the activity of your default mode network, right? Your DMN. It dampens activity. So when you look at the map of the networks of the brain, if the conductor is there or the ego is there, it will tell the different parts of the brain, you and you can communicate, but you and you can't, right?
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm putting my foot down, and that is the symphony that we're creating. Right? But if you take out the conductor, you could see all of these different parts of the orchestra communicating with each other. And that's why you get much more creative, right? With psilocybin or with LSD, because you're basically dampening or taking out the ego from the equation. And remember, the ego is not a noun. For me, it's a verb, right? Because you're selfing all the time. Yeah, each time that you're moving around, you're meeting people, etc. The self is just continuously, it's a process. rather than something static.
Like some alter identity or something like that.
Yeah, it's a process that just comes up, right?
Here's a hot winter tip for you. It's called Organifi Gold. If you've ever had a golden latte, you know how bomb this type of herbal elixir tastes and feels. I've been on this stuff for years and have no plans of stopping anytime soon. It's got 9 superfoods like turmeric, ginger, reishi mushrooms, and tons of other great stuff that support rest, relaxation, recovery, and repair. I blend mine up with warm water and either ghee or coconut oil. It's also low sugar, organic, and super calming when you need to get your chill on. It's like a warm dessert, except it's actually really good for you. Organifi Gold is, of course, completely organic. It's also gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, vegan, and of course, thank God, non-GMO. So if you're looking for an alternative to sweets and coffee late in the day or at night, Organifi Gold is the ticket. You can get your gold over at Organifi.com/lifestylist. That's ORGANIFI, Organifi with an I. Organifi.com/lifestylist. And they are going to give you 20% off anything in the store if you use the code lifestylist. Again, that's Organifi.com/lifestylist. And the code is lifestylist.
I think so many people in spiritual circles vilify the ego. And I used to see it from that perspective, like, I have to get rid of the ego. That's my problem. But I see it more broadly as nature's way of allowing us to differentiate, right? And to assess and judge. And so when you become too ego identified, then you're into judgment of everything and valuation of everything constantly and putting yourself somewhere in the hierarchy of your valuation as I'm better than everyone in the kind of classical sense of a big ego, or in low self-esteem and low self-worth, your ego identified kind of on the flip side of ego, where your valuation and differentiation of yourself compared to others is less than them. And it puts you in this yo-yo of like, where do I fit in order to find safety and to perceive threats, right? So
wow, you have that down in a complex way.
Well,
I look at it really in really very simple terms.
But do you see what I mean? So
I do understand what you mean.
It's like the ego is given to us by creation as part of our navigational system to see where we fit and where it's safe and where it's not, right?
There's where I begin, right?
Okay.
There's where I begin, because as a scientist, I look at it from an evolutionary point of view, right? The ego is actually a neural network. Basically, it's a network that is there for your physical protection, right? It makes sure that you get what you need to eat. It makes sure that you're able to reproduce. It makes sure that you maintain all of these things to keep you alive. So for everything physical, the ego is necessary, right? However, we invented language, and now we have the symbolic system around us, right? And my example is, someone cuts you off in the street, and you flip a bird. It's like you get very hot under the collar. You're no longer being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Right? But you're still very self-protective at the time. So for things physical, the ego is necessary. But when it comes to symbolic stuff, it's not necessary anymore, right? The thinking that goes up there, they're just like, I have this, I think of thoughts like a lava lamp, right? They're just thoughts. They're not owned by anyone. They just float out there. But the ego will say, oh no, those are mine. Those are my thoughts. Those are my ideas. Those are my, right? And you see that it actually stems from the fact that it has to provide for itself on the physical dimension, right? But when you basically, move that up to the symbolic dimension, then you get into all of the trouble, right? Because then things begin to have meaning and value, right? For example, you didn't get that fucking promotion or at work or something like that. I'm sorry, I've never occupied a paid position where I had to get employed. But the thing that's there is that how can I provide for myself, right? And suddenly your values are actually reflected or rooted still on the physical part of the role of the ego, which is to be able to provide you food, right? And to be able to do that, you must maintain your social status. You must maintain this, and the higher social status, or the more resources you have, then the more assured you are of that you're going to be alive and safe for a long time. And that's where ayahuasca actually is very useful, because it removes that insecurity of your survival, right? It removes the insecurity of survival, because the ego is always insecure that it's going to survive, and that drives most of us, right? The insecurity to survive drives most of us in our daily lives. Even if, no matter how far removed you are from that fundamental fractal right there, right, of the insecurity of the ego, if you take a look at what you're doing, why am I really doing this? And you go back and you say, oh, because I think I still have to provide for myself, even if I'm already set, right? So these are the kinds of things that you ask yourself, and you see that much of the stuff that you do actually stems back from the fundamental physical needs from where the ego arose, right? So that's how I look at it. For me, it's a lot simpler. Like, that's the insecurity of being alive and being able to reproduce.
Well, speaking of evolutionarily, right? It's living beings that are, I don't want to say lower because it like devalues them, but a caterpillar to a bird, to a cow, to a lion, right? They're just running on pure instinct, and their senses tell them what's safe, what to eat, what not to eat, who to mate with, but they don't have the prefrontal cortex to then get trapped in the calculations that we get trapped in when we have that same animal body telling us what's safe, what's not safe, mating, food, shelter, all those things you're describing. But we then seem to sort of intellectualize those fears of survival and getting what we need and what we want. And that's the trap, right? Where we can't get out of that perspective.
You mentioned something important, the prefrontal cortex. Why do you think teenagers make all of this, horrible decisions and so on? Because it's not fully mature until you're 25 years old.
Some people, I'd venture to say maybe 35, but yeah.
Prolonged adolescence.
Well, to that point though, it's kind of funny, but when I was a kid, I did a lot of drugs really early on. And thankfully, I was able to stop that when I was 26. I mean, recreational, destructive drugs. And so during the time when my brain was supposed to be developing and coming online like that, I got sober when I was 26. And I swear to God, from 26 to 36 is when I started actually kind of growing up, because I was so stunted emotionally and mentally, and God knows what other damage. So I wonder how common that is for people that actually shunt the development of their brain when it's supposed to be happening naturally and end up kind of, behind, so to speak.
Yeah. When you, at what age did you start using drugs, Luke?
8 or 9.
8 or 9. Well, the brain, the major events in the brain at the time will be as you're hitting puberty, right? The brain remyelinates, meaning the insulation of the wires of the brain get changed. So the first quiescent period is at age 7, right? Because that's when the myelination is complete for that particular time. And then it starts remyelinating again or reinsulating itself when puberty hits. That's why there are so many cross wires, right? Because of the uninsulated wires, because the hormones will be changing the firing rates and so on and so forth. It's necessary for sexual maturation, right? So that's what's called the organic brain syndrome, right? And people have been wondering whether or not that could be used for as a legal argument for teenagers, doing terrible things,
right?
So in your case, like you started at 8 or 9, and then your brain had to remyelinate, right? And then your prefrontal cortex is also maturing. And so when you're actually hijacking the dopaminergic system or the serotonergic system, and cocaine is dopaminergic essentially, you're essentially exhausting already the cells of the body. But the good thing is, when you're younger, your capacity for neurogenesis is so much higher, right? As adults, there's still some neurogenesis that goes on, or meaning the production of new nerve cells, but not as much when you were younger. So the bounce back that you're getting is actually because you woke up and said, I'm not going to do this shit to my brain anymore or to myself anymore.
Yeah.
But, when did you stop using drugs?
26.
76?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're like this, man. It's, I'm kidding. Because I don't recommend actually constant drug use, right? For until you're about to 20. No, if you're, for me, it's like this. If you're going to get fucking addicted, get addicted at 26. Don't get addicted before.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's a tough life to grow out of.
Yeah, because
and many people don't. Many people don't escape. I would say the vast majority of people that go into acute cycles of addiction don't end up recovering.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex is very, very important for risk assessment, right? What risks are you going to take in your life, and how do you intuitively calculate those risks? And that's extremely important, right?
Hence, teenagers, driving 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, because I notice now, as I'm older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I don't like doing things that are physically dangerous for the thrill of it. Right?
Yeah.
When I was young, I mean, my whole life choice, spectrum was based on that. But yeah, like jumping off cliffs and, skydiving, whatever, things like that. It's like, I find myself opting out of things like that where there is risk involved. I guess the ability to assess that has been restored or established now.
You keep on pulling stuff out of me when you're saying something. You're now actually know what your risk aversions are, right? And
right.
I have this model, the video game model of living my life, right? It's like the three things that are important to me are life, health, and time. So one, I'm not going to put my life at risk. I'm okay to go bungee jumping. I'm okay to go skydiving. But those are calculated risks, But I am not going to overtake a guy in anger with an obvious gun rack at the back of his truck.
right.
Not put your life necessarily at risk. And so this life, and then this health, right? It's like Pac-Man. You eat all of those cherries and things, even if they taste bad for you. If it's good for you, then you take them because the quality of your health determines the quality of your life, right? And then what uses it to be in pain all the time and have all the money in the world, right? And then time is actually it's the only thing that you have, right? So you have to pay attention as to where you put your attention to in time, right? If you're watching porn 60% of the day, then that's where you're spending your time. And if you're, essentially, if someone is actually always telling you what to do, then you're actually doing your time under his time, right? So for me, it's like if you don't do all these things, it will be game over, right? So you do all these things so that you actually don't go game over way too early. Right? So, and it's the only currency that we have really is a time and our use of it, right? So
I mean, it's maybe other than the body, the only thing that you can truly own, right? I mean, you can't really metaphysically own anything except how you choose to spend each second, right?
Yeah, and on a practical level, since we're talking about health optimization here, I have patients. These are actually sick people, not clients who are healthy. I have patients who I tell them to do, an 8-hour feeding window, and before I suggest that, I ask them whether or not they could change their diet. And of course they can't, right? Because the hardest thing to do is to change your diet. So I said, okay, if you cannot control what you eat, can you control the time that you eat it? Oh, that's easy for me. So if you present it that way, it's like, yeah, I can control my time. I can limit my eating in 12 hours. Okay, if you can limit it for 12 hours, then let's start with that. And then you limit it for 10 hours of eating, and then 8 hours of eating, and then you stay there, and they see the developments in themselves. So that's the value of being able to take a look at where, even in the habits that you have, where in time do you spend them in the day, right? So you could get into nutritional ketosis when you wake up because you haven't eaten for the 8 hours of your sleep, and then you extend that to say to noon, and then you're 16 hours fasted, and then your mitochondria is regenerating fine, and your autophagy systems are doing well. And one of the things that I learned in practice is that it's very hard to tell patients to remember things. So I want everything complete within the day. They know when they're going to eat, they know that when they're going to stop eating during the day. So it's a daily schedule. They know when they stop eating, and they know when they can sleep, right? So it's like, and that's basically controlling the flow of your time, right? I'm not telling them to be militaristic and say, as I used to be when I was college, 7:01 to 7:02, wash face, that's the obsessive compulsive way of doing it. But you could see how looking at what you value, which is one of the things that you said earlier, determines how you spend your time. If you wake up in the morning and you meditate, then you're actually valuing your energy self, right? You're valuing your equanimity. It's important to you to start your day in equanimity, for example. And then you go out and spend your day in the sun. You hydrate yourself, etc. So it shows you, just looking at where you spend your time shows you what you value in your life, right? So for people who have kids, they spend time with their kids, and so on. It shows you where they value in their lives. But sometimes you go overboard, right? And I tell people with kids, hey, you have to take care of yourself first. It's like the oxygen mask in an airplane. You got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can put it on your child. So it's the same thing with your health. You have to take care of yourself first. Otherwise, no one will be left to actually take care of your kids if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah, or like a EMT. You train to save yourself first.
Yeah,
it seems selfish on its face, but when you really look into it,
that's why I say, being healthy requires a little bit of selfishness, because you have to be healthy first, right?
Yeah.
And I like this specialty that I started, health optimization, because I have to walk the talk, right? So I have to be healthy myself.
I can't believe you're 60, dude.
Yeah,
honestly. I mean, not only just the way you look, but your energy and vitality is very obviously robust.
Well, thank you. Look, thank you. Look, there's a pill for that. I'm kidding.
there are a few. I want to ask you, Ted. Because I don't know. I feel like we could do like 10-hour podcast blocks. Honestly, there's like so much to talk about, but people always ask me when my tongue's blue, like, what does methylene blue do? And I just go, just energy, focus, mitochondria. I kind of just throw things out.
Yeah.
But it's such a unique molecule, and it does so many things that it's like, I feel like you could study for years and never really get to all of its benefits. And I find it also so interesting because it's a pharmaceutical, and most pharmaceuticals are kind of single faceted. They're very targeted, they're isolated, they don't do a lot of different things. And they also come with side effects.
Yeah.
And methylene blue, with the exception of, mega doses of it that might have some side effects, it only seems to have benefits. So in relation to brain health, how does methylene blue work?
Yeah, let me, I told you earlier, I reclassified our nootropics, right? First, you're health optimizing nootropics, right? And then you go to performance optimizing nootropics, where you're not necessarily healthy, but you want to push something. And then there's a class that I call blue tropics, not because my products are blue, but really because the exemplar of the class is methylene blue. So methylene blue does basic cell health optimization. It's able to donate electrons in the electron transport chain, and therefore you could produce more brain energy. That's why there's a brightening experience when you do that.
It seems to have both pro-oxidant and antioxidant potential. Is that true? And if so, is that unique to this, or are there other things?
It is because it's either it can be in a reduced form. The reduced form is actually colorless. Right?
Okay.
So, but in order to do that action, it has to be either not reduced, and then it moves to its reduced form, and then it's just like any other redox reaction, right? It accepts an electron, it donates an electron, and then it accepts an electron. So essentially, what it does there is it adds electrons to your electron transport chain. It's a brain health. It's a basic cell health optimizer. It's only good not only for the brain but for the rest of the body, because it's not distributed just to the brain but to the rest of your body. So it's also neuronal health optimizer. It's because the neuronal health optimizer will be, it's at low levels, it will actually serve as an MAOA inhibitor, meaning it will inhibit your liver and raise your dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine.
So like a natural antidepressant effect?
Yeah, natural antidepressant effect. And then very good. And when you give it at a higher dose, it will have MAOB inhibition, and it will prevent the degradation of phenethylamines, like those found in your chocolate, and dopamine. So you become more high with higher doses of it. So after that, there's a neural network. It optimizes your neural network. It raises the brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF. So we know that, just as a side comment, because we didn't touch on it earlier. So in neural network, it raises the low dose, even microdoses of LSD, for example, will raise your BDNF. Right? Methylene blue will raise your BDNF. Ketamine will promote spinogenesis, meaning they forms new connections within 6 hours of taking ketamine. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. LSD
crazy.
is within 8 hours. You'll form new connections in the brain.
Even in a microdose.
Yeah. And DMT will promote the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus of the brain. So these are all, you can see that methylene blue is also in that same class because it raises the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. DMT is actually known to produce neurogenesis, right? Which is a more difficult feat to do because you're basically inducing the stem cells, say, here, grow more neurons. And
is that true of endogenous dimethyltryptamine? Say you're doing breath work and yogic exercises, and you're exciting the pineal gland and that whole cascade of neurotransmitters to end up with natural DMT in your system.
Yeah, my sense is that it's too low, right? You have to provide a higher exogenous source in order to actually push it to a neurogenetic pathway. But I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. Right,
okay.
Because the studies have been to give IV DMT, right?
I've heard about that.
So that's methylene blue also does all of that this classic psychedelics do. MDMA works by a different pathway. So MDMA actually works by rewiring your brain in a process called neuroplasticity. Right.
So is this why MDMA therapy seems to be so effective?
Oh, yeah. They came out with the results of the phase 3 clinical trials, and it's on track to becoming a drug. You have to do it concomitant with psychotherapy. Right. And they have really great results in that. But what it does, MDMA is actually raises 3 of your neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine, and your norepinephrine levels, right? But it has to be coupled with psychotherapy for PTSD, right? So that's what it's going to be approved for. As I said, it's going to be disease-based for these things. So methylene blue, basic cell health optimizer, neuronal optimizer, neural network optimizer, and then there's a brain health optimizer. So essentially with if you do low-level light therapy or you expose yourself to sunlight, right, then it activates the mitochondria in the brain, right, and it actually is neuroprotective. It protects the brain from damage. And it's also a brain performance optimizer because it has been shown to actually enhance memory. So aside from the main part that it enhances cognitively is your recall, right? So that's why methylene blue is what I call a blue tropic. It's an exemplar of the class. It does everything, right? From basic cell
So
all the way
crazy.
to the brain, all the way to the performance of the brain. So what I did with blue carnitine is to create what I call a blue tropic stack, right? So now you want more motivational engagement, for example. So there's a little bit more nicotine in there and a bigger working memory. So I was envious of actually that limitless pill, right? That's why I wanted like what can do this for me. So you can stack all of this and you can have what's called a blue tropic stack, and that's how I classify nootropics now. So, health optimizing nootropic that's really needed by your body, not just your brain. And then there's a performance optimizing nootropic for your fitness to perform a task, like to memorize something, or to think about something, or to have an insight about something. What is it good for? And then there's the blue tropic stack, which is both a health optimizing nootropic or an HON, right, and a performance optimizing nootropic. Now, what we didn't touch on really is that in the brain, when you're looking at brain health optimization, right, and you're looking at the EEG to test the brain, right? When you meditate, I know you're a meditator. When you meditate, it has been shown, right, that the frontal theta waves and the parietal gamma waves actually oscillate, right? They oscillate, and there's increased power in both. And it's just found in February. There's a paper, February 2021, that showed that it's actually used by the brain for spatial memory, for memory, in terms of your location in space, so on. But then there's a study like more than a decade before that shows that ketamine actually modulates this theta and gamma oscillation. So I'm not telling people, to take ketamine instead of meditating, but it does the same thing, right?
I want to take just a moment to share one of my greatest discoveries with you. It's an insanely cool and innovative regenerative medicine clinic called Advanced Rejuvenation. Two-time past guest Dr. John Lawrence created this world-class healing center in Sarasota, Florida, and the stuff they're up to is mind-blowing. I'm talking about the latest and greatest modalities like methylene blue IVs with red light laser enhancement for nuclear-level antiviral effects and superhuman mitochondrial power. Plus other incredibly effective treatments like precision ultrasound-guided injections of stem cells, growth factors, and PRP, as well as prolotherapy, peptides, and TRT sound wave therapy. Dr. John and his team are early adopters of the most advanced alternative medicine tools on the planet and have helped hundreds of people like me not only recover from chronic pain and injuries, but also take their physical and even mental performance to the next level. So if you're looking for the very best in orthopedic medicine, pain relief, injury healing, spine and back problems, and even stroke recovery, Advanced Rejuvenation serves up the best regenerative medicine has to offer. To learn even more about the wizardry these guys are up to, go back and listen to John Lawrence on episodes 367 and 380 for a comprehensive understanding of how he and his team are reinventing modern medicine. In the meantime, you can reach them at advancedrejuvenation.us to explore your treatment options. And chances are that if you're dealing with a stubborn issue, they can help. So check out advancedrejuvenation.us and experience the future of regenerative medicine.
We were talking about ketamine,
Mm-hmm.
and when we're talking about ketamine, we're not talking about like going to a rave and partying, and God bless people that choose that path, but with a more intentional purpose, whether it be therapist assisted ketamine, journeys and things like that, or even just lower dose meditations and things like that I've used it for. I find that one to be as equally bizarre as methylene blue, and the fact that it just does so much,
Yeah.
and that it's a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
Because I'm of the mind like pharmaceuticals are always like last resort for anything, but ketamine seems very safe if done responsibly.
You know why it's safe, right? For me, as a physician, I find it safe because it doesn't depress your respiration when you're in
Okay.
it. That's why it's used in battlefield surgeries, right? It doesn't depress your respiration.
And for animals, small animals,
Yes,
and
and
kids,
yeah,
and things,
yeah.
right?
I had my tonsillectomy done when I was already in third year medical school, and you know that general anesthesia will actually fuck up your memory, right? So, I am a doctor. I was becoming a doctor, and I didn't want to have a fucked up memory. And they've shown that GA can actually fuck up your memory for up to 5 years. Like,
Oh, wow.
none of that. So I had actually ketamine infusion, right? And you open your mouth, and there's this huge trocar coming into your mouth, and you could see everything.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
but
God.
that's why it's called a twilight anesthetic, right? You're
Right.
just this in twilight. But
Right.
the interesting part of it, the new study that they did actually in the K-hole, right? It's the ego dissolution that you feel in a K-hole, where you just have to yield and say, okay, I am out, right? And you're observing, but you're out. So what's happening there, they found out just recently, this year, is that the cerebral cortex actually stops firing for a few minutes, and you're in the K-hole. It's just beautiful silence, right? It's just beautiful silence in there before it starts firing again. But then they also found that the oscillating firing between the theta and gamma waves is the one that produces the dissociation.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah.
That's so strange. And we were talking about this in 5-MeO DMT last night, but it's so strange, I think, with those two compounds in particular, because in the depth of the experience, and I was telling you about 5-MeO with this, that I've had a few times where I felt like if I didn't exert a small amount of effort to keep breathing, that I would have just left the body. It's like someone's got to breathe me over here because I'm not here anymore. Kind of sense. And you said no, that actually won't happen. Otherwise, everyone
it doesn't.
Everyone would be dying all the time on it, and it would be a really big fiasco. But
it won't depress your respiratory center.
That's
because
so strange.
it will kick in
versus like an opiate or something.
Oh, an opiate
right?
will definitely cause respiratory depression.
Right.
That's why it's very dangerous.
Someone might take heroin and hit that twilight experience and dissolution and disassociation, but their heart actually, or their breathing will stop, and thus heart stop.
And that's the issue with that, right? And that's why I am the safety for example, for ketamine and for these classic psychedelics, the safety for them is really very high. Because no one gets addicted to classic psychedelics. If any, you should have a healthy fear of them, as I do.
Oh my God, right? I sure do.
Remember, I have a way of making ayahuasca gentle, right?
Yeah,
I have my farm.
Someday, damn it, I'm going to join you in that.
And for me, it's like there's this fear that you're even going to take it, right? But you feel this calling, but there's a healthy fear, so there's really no danger at all that you're going to get addicted to it. And second is that you're not going to get any respiratory depression from it. In fact, my worry more is that in the traditional, I know that people would like to preserve the traditional ways of doing things, right? Like, for example, the actual ayahuasca, where you have the dieta and you throw up and so on, is that if this is done in the forest, etc., you can actually choke, right? You can have all of these accidents that can happen. So for me, it's like, is there a more gentle way of doing this? Because I found out from my, genetic testing that, I could not metabolize the MAO inhibitor that in Banisteriopsis caapi. So, in fact, if you really want to kill me, Luke, you can just give me a bottle of proton pump inhibitor like Zantac. I will be dead. Yeah, because I could not metabolize my liver does not have the enzymatic capacity to detoxify it. And with classic Banisteriopsis caapi vine, which is a liver inhibitor, I couldn't That's the reason why I was throwing up so badly the first time I took it. But it was such a, that it's a significant experience, but it's just like, is there any way to make this experience, more acceptable in terms of the body wear and tear? Because so you could bring back something significant from the journey, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point. There's a balance of the traditional wisdom, the ancient wisdoms, right?
Yeah.
The wisdom carriers, the shaman, the facilitators throughout time that have done things in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I know that there's value in that, because in the spirit realm, a lot of things can't be explained. So perhaps there is some purpose to taking the ayahuasca vine with the DMT containing plant and having that whole experience, the purge. Who knows, maybe demons are being purged out of you through throwing up. I mean, I've heard some people next to me and I'm like, that's more than throwing up. That's the exorcist. You know what I mean? So there's something to that, but
I thought purging meant divorce.
At times it can. But that said, I mean, I think the intention of people that are having these experiences, with the exception of people that are maybe trying to escape or just have a good time or something, which I would not advise you take these types of substances to do that. It's probably going to be a nightmare if you do, but which I've experienced earlier in life. But I think we're all seeking to have a deeper relationship with consciousness. There's something within our spiritual will that wants to go back to the mothership, so to speak, right? It's like we're here in the earth plane and we're in a material world in our body and it's linear, and yet some of us are drawn to what's beyond that, and we want to have those experiences. And I think what's exciting, but also people might want to be mindful about, is that now this is becoming more acceptable, culturally. I mean, we wouldn't have even talking about this on a microphone 10 years ago, medical licenses or someone's reputation, and also the risk of influencing people to be reckless when they do have these experiences, So it's an interesting time because you have the ancient wisdom, but then you have innovation, like what you're describing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, we can take DMT without having to have that purgatory effect, yet still come away with things that heal us emotionally and physically and connect us spiritually and to one another. So it's a really interesting time in that way.
Always very eloquent when you say things that way. I'm a little, I'm always like the blunt type in terms of that, because I got stumped once when I was asked, so how do you include spiritual health in health optimization, medicine, and practice? Well, I said, lack of spirituality is called the DMT deficiency syndrome.
That's good. That's good.
I just give them DMT and let them begin their spiritual journey, right?
What I've called DMT, particularly 5-MeO, is I call it the cure for atheism. It's like, I don't know how you could walk away from that and be like, nope, this is all there is. It's just next level. On that note, we were chatting a little last night about 5-MeO, and I was telling you how I felt at times like I could stop breathing right now. Like, am I going to die? Not in a fearful way, but just out of curiosity. Being still in a body and having a subtle awareness that your consciousness is still inhabiting and animating this body, but you're barely tethered to the body, if at all, for moments. And then that fear comes in of like, oh boy, I better get back in the body because I'm not ready to leave, right?
That's the ego restarting.
I have work to do here. What is actually happening in the brain, and maybe neurochemistry, but also brain waves in a 5-MeO experience?
I have not seen, for example, the brain waves, but there are fMRI studies, the blood oxygen level studies of the bold studies that are done in fMRI to see where the blood is actually flowing. Right, so we know.
So someone's taking 5-MeO and going in a tube.
Yeah, in a tube.
God. I guess you wouldn't really care actually, because you're kind of not there anyway.
Not there. And what it does is that it significantly decreases the blood flow to the default mode network, meaning it actually for lack of a more shocking word, actually kills the circuit, for a short period of time, like totally quiet. So no electrical activity and so on,
Wow.
and then your and then you get out of the no, you feel the fear again because the
Yeah.
ego is coming up again.
Yes.
The circuit is coming up again.
Yes, absolutely true. And I've observed quite a few people as just a witness in those experiences. And it's really interesting to see that some folks are able to just completely surrender through the whole experience. Maybe it's a 20 to 30 minute whole thing, and 3, 4, 5 minutes of the depth of the experience. They take the hit, lay back, and they just have a smile on their face and they're just totally surrendered. And other people take the same dose and they're like, fuck this, what's happening? And they totally freak out.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to observe. You can really see the ego, fighting and grasping for
survive.
its sense of
It will
identity,
survive.
right? And I had an experience last December where, because the first time that I had 5-MeO, I was very surrendered into it. And it was extremely intense, but there was nothing that arose within me that was fighting and grasping and hanging on. The second time I did it, I had a complete ego, I want to say ego death, but an ego reawakening after the depth of the initial experience, during which the witness observer was not even present. It was just pure consciousness, just absolute oneness. Then as the ego started to reemerge and have an awareness that something was happening, it then put up this massive wall of resistance and was like, make this stop, I'm out. I stood up, I was like, make it stop. And it was kind of a bad trip within what ended up being a really beautiful and enlightening experience. And it took me a couple weeks of integration to ascertain what might have happened. And what it seemed like happened was, there was a total dissolution of the self and that default mode network. And I was surrendered into that and just breathing and just in pure consciousness. And then as the ego started to become aware of what had just happened, it put up a fight. But what's so funny, and I think it's such a great example of kind of the lack of innate wisdom in the ego structure. It came up and fought, but it didn't realize it was already gone. You see what I mean? Like it was mad about what I already just did, not what was about to happen, because I was reemerging and coming back into normalcy, right?
That's classic.
So
right?
it kind of came in like retroactively. And 2 weeks later, I'm like, wait, ego, you came in and put up resistance, but it was too late. You were already out of the picture for a good 3 minutes,
Well, but that's exactly what it does, right? What do they say in classic meditation teachings? You always basically either dwell in the past or in the future, but never in the present. So that's
Right.
what the ego does, right? So even if it's already past, it still actually hits you for what you did in the past.
Yeah,
and
it was like it was late, I'm like, you already missed it.
Yeah.
We already separated from you and we were in consciousness. You can relax now. But then, the beautiful thing is in subsequent experiences with that medicine, I've built a working relationship, I guess you could say, with that ego identity, with that structure. And so there's more of a unification between it and I, the self with the capital S. So it's like going into the experiences, even when it gets a little wonky, there's this sort of razor's edge I've been able to find where I keep the ego at bay and communicate to it in a sense that it's safe and that it can relax.
That's the key part.
That it can relax,
Yeah,
and then both of us can actually have this incredibly healing
you have to keep it
experience.
safe, right? You have to make it basically feel. The word I like to say is you have to make it feel secure. Right? Because it's the insecurity that drives it. Right? What drives you to, you already have everything in the world and you still want more and more, right? What drives you to, well, you already have everything in the world and say, I want more profit and therefore I'm going to pollute the waters. I'm going to, I use child labor. I'm going to traffic humans and so on and so forth. That's the ego, right? Nothing is ever enough for it, right?
It's abject insecurity.
Yeah, it's just the full insecurity. And then what happens when I want to be remembered forever. Right. That's also the insecurity of being impermanent. Right. So one of the meditations that you do, right, is on meditate on impermanence of things. Everything is just, impermanent and goes into cycles. But it doesn't like that. Notice that when you were younger, if you found something good, you wanted to make it permanent, right? But you realize that no, it goes in a cycle. You can't make something permanent, just because it's you find that it's good. So that's what it does. Is that it tries to reassure. At my age, I have many patients who want to leave a legacy one way or the other, right? And I tell them, well, you have to reassess, exactly, are you wanting to leave a legacy, or are you going to motivate yourself to allow your values to be revealed in the world instead, right? I myself had that kind of in-depth look at what I really wanted to reveal in the world. Is I am concerned about health. Because it's the one thing that makes people suffer less. Right? If you're healthy, you suffer less. The people around you suffer less, and therefore you tend to make healthier decisions, even for the planet. Right? So not only for other people, but for other creatures. The thing is, we've become so. And this is my lamentation, Luke. We've become so human-centric, right? Everything is just about humans. That we are not looking at. We are just one species here. We're not. We're probably not the most important one, just the most pernicious ones, right? And then there's there are all this our environment.
What's the most important? I think it might be phytoplankton or bees. Those might be my top two.
You might be right about the phytoplanktons or the phytoplanktons, because they could generate energy from sunlight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as a tangent here, one of the things before that I was thinking is like, I really think that moving for the sake of finding food is a waste of time. Can I put in some chlorophyll in my system, harvest sunlight, and produce energy?
Totally. I mean, they say they're breatharians that nailed that. The sun gazing and the breath. You hear about them, but you need to follow them around 24/7 for a couple years to make sure they're not sneaking their candy bar or some sardines here and there. I remember back in the early days in kind of the vegan raw food community, there would be these figures that were supposedly breatharians, and I don't disbelieve that. I mean, in the quantum realm, like energy's energy, right? So I think one could develop that ability. I think it would be a very exceptional person that could do that, But
I just received a cartoon actually that reflects that. It's like if Jesus Christ actually multiplied the loaves into 5,000 and fed it to the multitude would say, "Is that gluten free?"
Or the wine, they'd be like, "What's the sulfite level of this wine, sir?"
But anyway, it was just so funny how we have made it as complex as we have today, right? In terms of the way we live our lives and so on. That's why I always like to go back to first principles. First principles of health. First principles of performance, first principles of how you combine the two, based on our many conversations, Luke, especially our off camera conversations, is that how do we include spiritual health optimization, into everyone's lives, right? How do we make sure that they feel not only included, but they have a sense of responsibility to an organic spaceship called Earth. That's only one that's hurtling through space, and it's the only one we've got for now, right? So when we look at things that way, all our petty problems are really, really petty. They become so insignificant when we take a look at us as a whole, right? Not just humanity, but the world as a whole.
Yeah, as one fluid moving organism, right? The whole thing. I think that's such an error in humankind's perspective, this dominionistic relationship with this living being that we call Earth, that we're separate from it, therefore separate from one another, separate from the environment. And one of the most beautiful, I think, experiences and lessons that I ever had was one day actually in a psilocybin journey out in nature. And it sounds trite, it doesn't, when you describe these processes and these experiences in integration, they always sound like kind of flat. But in the moment, when you have the realization, you're like, oh my God, the key to life.
Well, it's because there's one thing that actually captures that. Right? These things are experiential. Right. You can translate it to words all you want, but it will always fall flat because it needs to get experienced.
Yes.
Right.
So yes, absolutely. And like any powerful spiritual realization, words fall very short because there's no way to convey or transmit the felt experience. But what the experience was, despite it sounding like obvious or trite perhaps, was such a profound knowing that, because I was out in nature and I was like, wow, God, it feels really good to be out in nature. And, the voice kind of spoke to me and said, you are nature. And everything changed in that moment. My whole relationship to the planet, the living beings on it was just completely altered forever. I felt like I was part of the fabric of the material world that's kind of held in suspension here by this invisible hand of God, right? It's like, I don't feel from that moment forward that I'm separate from the frog, the creek, the sky, the other people, right? Even those people I disagree with, looking someone in the eyes and having a conversation, and the intellect going like, I disagree with everything you're saying right now, yet being able to subjugate that and see past that and go, oh, I'm actually looking at myself right now. Yeah. I'm looking at myself and how much compassion can I generate for this person that I don't like or disagree with, because I'm actually just really cultivating compassion for myself because I am them. That kind of experience, again, is like, it's hard to describe. It sounds like airy-fairy and kind of, fluffy unicorns and rainbows, but to actually integrate that and cultivate that and have that experience grow within me has been a huge gift.
I have a very model. We have model making brains, and I like to put in models in my head on, that when I look at it, I visually understand it inside my head. And I was trying to conceptualize this whole thing, and concepts are the worst things when it comes to this, right? Because you can't express them in concepts. But I said, initially I was looking at myself as this character in a holodeck, right? And everything is made up of the same voxel. We're all the same, right? Made up of the same voxel. Everything is moving around. And then I realized, no, I'm actually the holodeck that contains me and everything else in it. So then you begin to see that that's consciousness, right? That's consciousness. Everything that's appearing in there is you, right? Including the way you look at yourself and this body that you have and so on and so forth. It's just all of those are appearing in consciousness. So that switch from being the character in the holodeck to being the holodeck itself, right? And that you're all made up of these fucking voxels, the same thing, the same energy, same everything else. Yeah. Then you shift immediately and say, okay,
that's great. That's great. That's kind of like, if you think about the center of the universe. Yeah. Right? Yeah. The center of the universe seems to be generated from whatever point you are in it, right? Because there is no like center of the universe over there. The center of the universe is dictated by the observer of said universe. Therefore, I am in the center of it, right? Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. There is also another thing that you mentioned that actually triggered something in me. Remember, I was raised Catholic, right? So you pray to a God, right? And the God is external and so on. And with the pharmawaska journey that I did, for 2 years, right? Regularly, every 2 months, I was taking my pharmawaska. Well, wow. Dose of my own medicine, right? Yeah. And it was actually interesting that one of the key lessons that emerged there is that, no, you're not a supplicant. In the first instance, I was this person looking up, asking the heavens for whatever I needed, right? And after the journey, you are the creator looking down and saying, this is what you want to make happen, right? So from supplicant to creator is one of those major switches that the pharmacological journey or the DMT journey has done for me. Is that, you know, we are basically creating things all the time, right? We're co-creating things all the time. And so we're not separate from our environment. You know, our environment is making us just as we're making our environment.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why there's no boundary, there's no difference, right? Between us and others and us and our environment. And the term is like that old concept that we have of dominating nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a very old one, and it's very hard to take out because our educational system is that way, right? We are separate, and our role is actually to control and dominate nature. That's how I grew up too. And then you realize, like, no, you are nature itself, so you flow with it, right? And then now you begin to understand, you know, the I Ching and, you know, the Tao Te Ching and all of these other Chinese systems where they always take a look at how energy flows, right? For example, I Ching as a divinatory system will see, you know, with the rise and fall of cycles. You know, if you take a look at just as the basic philosophy of how that oracle is made, I Ching is basically, you know, you flow like water. The Tao Te Ching is basically, you know, you flow like water. So you see the energy. It's like, no, you are actually part of that whole process. You know, you are. What is it that Rumi said? You are the ocean in a. You are the drop in the ocean and the ocean in a drop. Right. That's what Rumi said. So, you know, and those things are really very hard to communicate, right? Because it's an experience. The best that we have are these kinds of sayings, and it's very hard to understand if you haven't had experience.
Yeah. Wow, dude.
Yeah.
What a great conversation. Thank you.
Oh, always a pleasure, Luke.
Yeah, every time we chat, I just like expanded consciousness, awareness, learning, intellectual understanding, felt energetics that are beautiful. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, Luke, you know, it's always my pleasure.
Yeah.
And for your the people who are following you, you know, Luke has been gracious enough to actually try all of my various experiments and things. After I've experimented it on myself, but, you know, I'm actually grateful that he's giving me all this feedback.
I love it. No, that was fun this morning, actually, getting to kind of like, let me see if I can unravel the mystery of this one, you know, just really out of curiosity, not that it matters, but it's just, when you know, it's difficult to not have one experience like with one molecule. And then when you do something else, the mind wants to find a correlation, right? Because it wants to kind of make sense of it somehow. But I love your curiosity, and, you know, you have the intellectual prowess and the understanding of, you know, chemistry and things like this to actually be able to do things safely and effectively and, you know, move us forward. Because what we're, I think, describing here today in terms of expansion, right? It's expansion. It's expanding consciousness and awareness and intelligence and intuition and memory and all of this stuff that kind of is within consciousness, but the brain seems to be needed to do a lot of it, right? So it's like, you know, the brain's kind of this transmitter receiver thing that's helping us to interface with consciousness, and there's ways that you can up level that.
Actually, two things. One is we should consider us as an entire instrument, right? So we don't have this picture of a disembodied brain. So the brain is actually housed within, you know, us, and it's part of us, and so on. And it's it's necessary, right? Because with you know, essentially, consciousness is what we all we have in order to experience anything, right? It's all we have. Our appearances, in the internal sensors, external sensors, like your eyes and so on, they all appear within the context of consciousness. So without that, you know, we basically don't experience anything in life, right? Because it's what's available. And so for me, uh, the mission that I have stated is to democratize enlightenment, right? Because what is preventing us from actually becoming that consciousness itself, or becoming the holodeck itself, right? Becoming conscious itself is that the ego actually prevents us from doing that. What if we can assure it that it's already secure, and its survival is assured, etc., etc.? Is it possible for us to be able to decrease suffering that way? Because it's the ego that suffers. And what I say when I'm actually teaching this is that if there's a who, then there's an ego. If there's a who that's suffering, then that's the ego. And it's the one that is doing the suffering. So how can we decrease the suffering? Because for me, that's the root fractal, right, of everything else that we do. So if you decrease the suffering, then all the suffering, all the other suffering in your life would decrease, right? And for me, and suffering for me is simply defined as that clinging and aversion of the ego, right? And you're not even noticing it, right? That you have the clinging and aversion. What if you can observe that clinging and aversion, right? So now, as I said, we go back to the beginning now of our talk here is that enlightenment is the freedom from the illusion of the self. So when you are free from the illusion of the self, that is just a process in there that's happening, there's no true identity, then you are able to become nature itself. You are able to become consciousness itself, right? And watch everything arise. And the important thing for meditators out there, even attention is an arising from the consciousness. That's why that's a role, is to focus from one thing to the other. That's why you anchor it on a breath, or you anchor it on a mantra. You anchor it because you have to hook it somewhere in order to keep it behaving, right?
Right.
Because
it's like tying up a dog.
Yeah. It's not that's not the ego that you're tying. You're tying attention. Right? You're tying attention to something for you to be able to see that it's just another arising in consciousness, right? So, and that's how I say that our company mission, Smarter Not Harder, the makers of prescription, is to decrease suffering in ourselves and to decrease suffering in others, knowing that there is no other.
Damn, son. Mic drop. Boom. It's a great closer.
Yeah.
Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced you, Ted, that you might share with us?
Old or new?
Any. What comes to mind? First thing comes to mind.
Oh.
Teachers or teachings. A concept, a principle, a person, a book, a philosophy.
I'm more into disciplines, right? Teachings in various disciplines. So the first one is the first one that I think should be taught to everyone is evolutionary biology. Evolution, your evolution and everything else, because there you could see what I want people to see there, that I've seen, is that how you were constructed, right? And therefore, when you expand at how the mind works, how you're programmed. So there are two things, and I say this to people. There are 2 things that you have to be mindful of in your programming. One is a bioevolutionary program, right? For example, thirst, right? That's you need to drink, etc. And then there is the sociocultural program where the thirst becomes, I thirst for justice. Right? So those are our programming, and their programming is put in there by evolution, put in there by our families, our teachers, your attitudes. You examine your attitudes towards money, towards other people, and so on. You could see there are programs in you that are running. They are programmed in there, and that's why you have to study your evolution, right? And see how you're wired. And the important thing in there that I actually emphasize is know your cognitive biases, right? Your confirmation bias, your, sunk cost fallacy bias, and all of these cognitive biases out there, they are how the brain work, right? we're not immune to them. We make them all the time. We make the mistakes all the time. But at least when they're there, you're able to recognize what they are, right? So that's one field that I wish people would actually take a look at more closely. Not just the evolution of the body, but the evolution of the programming of us, right? How we're programmed. And the second thing that I actually would like people to take a look at is ecology, right? Or deep ecology, as Fritjof Capra used to say, deep ecology, meaning our fundamental relationship with the environment and everything else in it, right? If you begin to know that you are just one species in this, you begin to see how insignificant you are and stop taking yourself way too seriously.
Absolutely.
Way too seriously. And the third is statistics, rational thinking, Bayesian thinking, even Bayesian statistics. So because that is more difficult, but I think it should be taught like in high school already, because it's a basis for rational thinking. It's thinking with basically making decisions based on your emotion is easy because that's intuitive, that's knee jerk, right? But when you have to make decisions that are data based, which we have now with the expansion of AI, and this is preparing our youth for the world that we're creating, right? You should know statistics. You should know probability, statistics and probability. You should know the various statistical models that are out there. You should start early. A simple example there is the seatbelt law, right? Before we didn't have it, but when we found out that because we have cars and our technology, and that they found out that people with seatbelts actually reduce their trauma, the intensity of the trauma or deaths by X%. So that's a rational decision, right? And the example that I gave, Massachusetts was one of the last states to adopt it because it wrinkled their clothes, right? But if you take a look at it, I remember these things by funny examples like that. But it can be applied to your life, right? There are certain decisions in your life where you actually have to make the effort because it requires energy to do rational decision making, right? We do it all the time in medicine, right? We are essentially looking at data all the time of what's coming in. But the problem is that I taught statistics for almost 20 years, and even now, when doctors read articles, it is scary for me what kind of conclusions they draw from it by not understanding exactly the models of statistics that they're looking at, right? So we should start this early, so we could have essentially a love for how we evolved and knowing how we're programmed as organic robots that are walking around here on Earth, the Earth that we're in, right? This is the ecology that we are, and then how we make better decisions by exerting a little effort, by taking a look at the data points and how they might be related to one another. That's the more difficult part because it requires more energy. But we need more of that right now because of the issues that we have for climate change, for example, and all of these other things that are happening to us. Those cannot be revealed by intuition. Those are revealed by the data points in our studies. So those are the three things that have influenced me a lot. I know, they're general classes of knowledge, but they have served me well in being able to understand myself, right? And being able to make decisions, immediate decisions on something, on things that need to get decided on, that are based on using your terminology now. That when you decide, it's based on love, it's based on abundance, it's based on health, it's based on happiness, it's based on bliss, right? So you're able to make those automatically, right? But it does require some study when when you do that, right? Yeah, I'm able to, like, for example, I'm able to provide for my family, but at what cost, right? At what cost are we doing this, right? So these are the things that when we actually have when our kids even have a decent understanding, of these fields of knowledge, they grow up being more conscious of that they're not really separate from their environment. And one of the things in health, for example, that we always forget is our vitamin D levels, right? We are yoked to the sun, man. You go out every morning and get some sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're yoked to the sun, and that's how. And vitamin D gene is what, about 750 million years old. So the receptor of that about 750 million years old.
Wow.
We did not yet exist. We're only 250 million years old, right, as a species. So you see how all of these are actually, serving to remind us that we are the environment itself, right? We're not separate from it. We're actors in it. Yeah.
Love it, dude. Thank you so much. That's maybe the coolest answer to my closing question ever, by the way. Usually it's like, oh, shout out to Gandhi, Jesus Christ, whatever, an author or something. That's deep stuff, man. Wow. Thank you so much for being able to go to the depths with me today, and thank you for doing the work you do. In closing, just give us your websites where people can find transcriptions, any of the other stuff you're doing.
If you want to check out Blue Carnitine and Just Blue, which is all methylene blue, it's at transcriptions.com. That's like prescriptions, but with a TRO because we use trochees. And then if you're interested in having a framework for biohacking or helping others biohack, or if you're a physician who would like to use, the new omics sciences in your practice, you can train with us. It's a nonprofit, homehope.org. As you know, the prescriptions actually is a major donor that allows homehope.org to be able to do its charitable work educating there's a program for physicians, which is health optimization medicine. There's a program for healthcare practitioners who are non-physicians called Health Optimization Practice, or HOPE. That's why it's called homehope.org. Our slogan is "Let's bring medicine home." Right?
Cool, man.
Yeah. And then, our main website, which contains nothing, but our mission, which is to democratize enlightenment, is snhlife.com. And for those in Asia, there's biobalanceinstitute.com and metametricslab.com.ph, which is essentially in the Philippines.
Cool,
yeah.
Man. Wow. God damn, you're managing a lot of stuff, my friend. You must be doing something right if your brain's able to do all that.
Well, if I can maintain this epigenetic age, I must be doing something right.
I barely manage my one website, and that's a lot. So yeah, man, thanks so much, Ted. Great to see you, dude.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for spending time with us.
Always, Luke.
Well, I trust if you made it through the duration of this conversation, I wasn't overselling Dr. Ted in the intro. Man, what an incredible human being. Just so much fun, so lighthearted. It's interesting. I've noticed over the years that many folks who are on the spiritual path and folks that are highly intelligent and intellectual like Ted often carry with them an air of seriousness. And a wise teacher once told me, never trust anyone that's too serious. I think that's really true. I mean, there are a few thought leaders and philosophers for whom I have respect, but I find them a little less impressive if they can't laugh at themselves and kind of laugh at the human predicament. And Dr. Ted is great at all of that. So thank you so much. And it really is a pleasure for me to be able to find people like Dr. Ted and curate these conversations for you to enjoy. I can only hope that you get as much out of them as I do. I mean, this for me is just part of my journey. These are people I would be talking to anyway if they would give me an audience. So the fact that I get to turn some mics on and share these chats with you makes it even sweeter. So thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this show, you're in for another massive doozy next week with episode 392 featuring Charles Eisenstein. That one's called Healing the Collective and Awakening to Unity. And like Ted, Charles Eisenstein is an incredibly brilliant mind and huge heart. And I've wanted to interview him for ages and just happened to catch him on a recent visit to Austin. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that download. And finally, remember, if you want to try some of Dr. Ted's formulations, you can go to lukestory.com/troscriptions. And for a limited time, you can use the code Luke10 to get 10% off. And then later on, you can use the code Luke5 for 5% off. That's the blue canatine, the Just Blue, which I think it's called. It's 16 milligrams of methylene blue. That one will light you up. And of course, their new product, of which I'm a massive fan, called Trocalm. And Trocalm is the one that's got, Kava, CBD, GABA, and some other calming thing. I forget. I think there are 4 ingredients, but man, it's great. I've been actually savoring those and hoarding them. I think I have 2 or 3 of the Trocalm troches at home. Troches are things you put up in between your cheek and gum to get it to your brain faster. You probably heard Ted explain that during this conversation. But I save those Trocalms for like dire emergencies of stress. And renovating this house seemingly endlessly here in Texas gives me a lot of stress. So I keep those for when I'm like about to blow my top, and they really do work. They're pretty cool stuff. So check them out over at lukestory.com/troscriptions. And as you know, anytime someone on the show is like promoting their stuff, I always make sure that we get you guys a discount. So hopefully that's helpful. I would hate to have people kind of get you all pumped on something, and then you go to the site and it's like, oh, got to pay full price. I just listened to this guy for 2 hours. So I'm hoping that is helpful for you guys. And you can always find all the stuff that I'm into over at lukestory.com/store. I've been curating that online marketplace for going on 7 years. After I started this podcast, I started to notice people would hit me up on social and shoot me emails. Hey, what's your favorite product for this and for that? And what do you use for this? And I just decided to put them all in one handy place, which again is at lukestory.com/store. And there you'll find literally everything I've ever used that I think is supportive of health and well-being. And more importantly, things that I still use all the time, like Dr. Ted stuff. So you can save yourself some internet searching by just going there. And it's funny because often, almost daily, I get messages from people on Instagram. Usually, I think that's the platform I get most of the DMs. And someone will say like, hey, what's your favorite water filter? Shower filter is a big question. What's the difference between FLFE, Blue Shield, and Somavedic? Which one's best? You know, the EMF stuff. People have a lot of questions about what I recommend. And you know, I would say I wear the term expert loosely, but I am very discerning about the products that I use around my home and things I put in and on my body. And I do quite a bit of research to eventually land on what I think is the best in class of any type of product. So you can know that. And there have been times where I'm onto some product and then I figure out there's a better one. And so I update the website and get rid of the old one and put the better one too. So I'm kind of constantly updating my web store. And just for clarity, I don't sell anything myself except my blue blocking glasses, which you can find on my site, or just go to gildedbylukestory.com. But what I do is essentially just provide discount codes and links to all my favorite products. And in some, but not all cases, I also receive a sales commission on things you buy through my store, which is incredibly helpful for me. As a content creator, it allows me to run this whole thing and keep producing long-form quality content with consistency and not have to go get a job down the street at Home Depot or whatever I'd have to do if I wasn't doing this. I think this is the only thing I'm really qualified to do, quite frankly. So, you know, thank you for supporting the store, and know that you're not only saving yourself time and energy to have to figure all this stuff out yourself, but hopefully getting discount codes and sometimes helping support what I'm doing too. So hopefully that's a trifecta win for the brands, for you, and for me and my team of awesome people, like my incredible executive assistant / show producer, Bailey Richardson. Shout out to that girl. Oh my God, would I be lost without her? You guys might remember a while back I was posting and making announcements on this show that I needed a superhero ninja, jack of all trades, and a lot of great people applied, and did tons of interviews and things like that. And finally, Bailey appeared, and she's been a real godsend. So I like to give the people that support me and what I do some love here and there. So if you ever hear this, Bailey, thank you so much. And for those of you that aren't Bailey, send her some prayers and well wishes, because she's an incredible human and makes it possible for all of this to work, quite frankly. So I think that's it, folks. I am stoked, man, next week to be back with you for Charles Eisenstein. He's a very frequently requested guest also. And the only reason I haven't gotten around to it is there's just so many interesting people that my list of people that my dream interviews is very long. And generally I wait until I can get them in person, which was, of course, the case with Charles. So for those of you that are, wandering into 2022 and having a hard time keeping your faith and hope for the future of humanity, and it happens to me sometimes too, trust me, things are super weird. I mean, it's just, we are living in a simulation, and oftentimes even your old host and friend Luke here is going like, can I just please get a ticket to another planet? This place is insane. But Charles, our guest next week, does a really great job in just making it all make sense, man. It was a really enlightening conversation for me, so I'm very happy to share that one with you. And with that, I am going to shut down this mic and get to work on the next episode. God bless. Be well.